pink granite. Well, that's how you get to the core of town, so to speak. Now, I'm no geologist, so I'm not going to stand here and tell you the technical name for the pink granite is trondhjemite, or the names of the minerals in the ground. I leave science to the scientist. But it is my opinion that history has better stories. See, the pink granites used to build monuments, like the old Baptist church, the Catholic church, and the Presbyterian church on East Broad Street, all made of local granite. Oh, and the Falls Church Bank was too. And Mr. Foot's gas station over on the corner of Washington. These were the social monuments of the time, local ones. I guess you could say that our history is hard and dense, just like the pink granite, that it's monumental and peppered over with mica to make it sparkle in the light. And you could say some of our history is buried, just like the stone, under sedimentary soil and all the structures and footprints that conceal it. But it's just waiting there, waiting, patient as can be, waiting for someone to come and find it again. Oh, you can still find pieces of the granite laying around though, even if it hasn't been seen as much as it used to be. There was a quarry at the bottom of the hill on the other side of the road. Some will tell you it was Trip Quarry. Some will call it Tenor Quarry. Some will call it the Falls Church Quarry and leave it at that. The opening dates, they work just about the same. Some say it opened in 1872. Some say it opened in 1880. Round the time it opened, Falls Church had just 100 homes, 11 businesses, and 8 churches. Oh, but the quarry was used back before that by the Native Americans. They made their arrowheads there. Plantation workers, they quarried the rock. There was quartz there, fool's gold there, and many other minerals, not just granite. I'd guess different people went for different things. Oh, but the quarry stopped operating in the 20s. Sure, people used it every now and again. But mostly, though, it began the process of being forgotten. Oh, after it went out of service, the black snakes and the water moccasins, they slithered in. Oh, but that's what happens. The moment you forget about something, it becomes something else. The pink granite from all those old buildings are what makes up that 15-foot arch over on Tenor Hill, built for E.B. Henderson and Joseph Tenor, and for all the men and women who stood up to be counted in this community. Maybe it's just me, but whenever I'm out there by the arch, I can't help but think of it as a gateway back to the time of old Tenor. I stand on one side of the arch, and I look through it, and I let the landscape change back to what it was. I watch as the granite works its way back into those old buildings, and I let history tell me all her stories. Oh, the city looked all kinds of wonderful, done up in its slick pink stone. If I look through the archway now, I can just about see it now.
You're getting it wrong. It was an Indian who took it first. Then the cousin of Chief John.
Say Native American, Adrian, not Indian.
Okay, Mom, a Native American took it first, from Broadwater in the battle of 1753. Then, a papoose was taken by a white man, and he was raised on the plantation. Then, the cousin of Chief John's married when he was older, and that's our ancestors. That's why we're in the museum.
We're not in the museum, Adrian. It's just our powder horn. I may be old, but I'm not fossilized yet, okay? So, Egg, how do you know all this?
Well, Granddaddy told me, and Great-Grandpa Henderson told him, and Mr. Freddie Foot Jr. told Great-Grandpa. That's who we're related to. And they all talk how we're related to Mimitu, how great Mr. Freddie Foot was, and how important our family stories are, so we remember them.
So, Freddie Foot had the powder horn before your granddaddy?
No, it was just passed, just like its story. But before I was born, Granddaddy told someone he wanted to put it in a museum.
But what did I tell you, Adrian? It still gets passed down to you. It's just not in your room. It'll be there for you to see, right under the glass display case. And we're coming today when the exhibit opens for the first time.
I've told all my friends to come and see it. Then they'll know my flame is famous.
Famous. Okay.
Mr. Merritt's open time.
Oh, hey, I think I found your powder horn. Come look.
Nah, that can't be ours. Doesn't say anything about Mr. Freddie Foot on here.
Oh, Jackie, didn't you say the name on the powder horn was Broadwater? That's what this one says. Let's see here. This powder horn belonged to Colonel Charles Broadwater, who fought in the 10th Virginia Regiment in the Revolutionary War. Yes. Broadwater was associated with many prominent Virginians, including George Washington, who mentions Broadwater in his writings. Historians estimate that the powder horn was passed down to his son, Charles L. Broadwater, when Colonel Broadwater died in 1806. Powder horns are commonly used to carry gunpowder in battle and were made from the hollow horn of an animal.
But that can't be ours. Our name's still on it.
Look, it looks like the museum forgot about us, sweetie. But don't worry. Listen, when I get home, I'm going to write a letter to make sure that our family gets represented, okay?
I guess our family's not famous after all. Just leave this
How dare they? How dare they just erase us and disappoint my little girl? Adrian was up all night before we went, said it would be better than Christmas, seeing our family's history in a museum, right up there with Washington and Dr. King's. Our family was kind enough to take this piece of history out of our home, for what? So that they could just ignore all that it's been through? I typed up histories explaining how the powder horn came to our family. And they have the gall to say that it was Colonel Broadwater's powder horn and that he passed it down to his son. End of story. Well, I'm trying to pass this down to my daughter. This story, this pride. How dare they take that away from me?
It hasn't been taken away, Jackie. I don't think it was that deliberate. A person can't forget what they never knew to pay attention to.
See, no, that is just the problem. I am tired of fighting to get people's attention. Why is it so hard for people to just acknowledge significant histories?
People simplify. People reduce. There's a plaque, not too far from here, but a mile, that stands on a spot that calls itself Haley's Corner. Well, in actuality, it should have been called Freddie Foot's Corner. But people, they forget about that part. Haley's the name remembered around here because, see, he was a local politician. Freddie Foot owned over 30 acres of land, which is now Falls Church. Worked his whole life to get it. Remember, he was a slave, so you know he had to work hard for everything he owed.
What keeps making that sound?
Ah, that's the bell over at Galloway Church. Sounds on the hour, sounds on the half hour. Sounds whenever there's been some local injustice or maltreatment, which is nearly the same. Oh, but I'm sure you've seen the church. Stands right proud up on the hill. But I'd be willing to bet you that you never heard of Harriet Bryce. She was a black woman, owned lots of land around here. She bought that land, sold it, donated it to the Methodists so they could build their church.
Why have I never heard about that? And how do you know so much?
Memories tend to linger around these parts. But don't worry, I won't let them forget. There's always another layer to what we think we see. Always one moment that ripples the water in every possible direction. So, here goes. That ended up with Colonel Broadwater's relic. Then there was the Civil War. Some today will tell you it was about states' rights, taxation, about the North and the South. Sure, it was about all those things. It was about the Union, the Confederacy, about Lincoln, Grant, and Lee. It's about white folk, black folk. But there was nothing new about talking up men in uniform. Sure, they were brave in their very own way, but so were some of those who never donned the brass buttons of the military. They were brave for just being who they were. Like Frank Brooks, he was a black man with the Home Guard, and whenever Mosby's raiders came to town to do as much damage to the Union Army and its sympathizers, took up the cause, sounded the alarm, and got everybody to safety. Lost his life doing it. And some of us don't know about him. But then there's John Reed. He was a white man, a holy man. He educated the local Negroes for a number of years. He also warned people about Mosby's coming. And do you know how he was rewarded? A bullet to the head. Well, that's not to say that there weren't some triumphs during the time of the Civil War. As a matter of fact, I think one of Falls Church's biggest unsung heroes are coming along right now.
Oh, good evening, Major Minor. If you don't have anything for me to do, I'm gonna go on down to the railroad and start the shift.
Oh, that's Mr. Frederick Foote. He worked as a servant on the Fitzhugh plantation and was then sold to the Minor family. Blacksmithing was his specialty. Oh, he was talented indeed.
Ooh, it's hot. That don't matter. If I can't be free, I'm gonna get me some land so I can leave it to my family, so they can have something to hold on to.
And in time, he would own over 33 acres of land. Over with 7 corners even. He wrote in his will to his family that they should never let the property go. He was proud of his accomplishments. But in 1954, when the land was still very much farmland, they had to let it go, sell it off. Tax reasons. But they received $750,000. Do you know how much that would be worth today? I'm getting ahead of myself. let me get back to the story. During the time of the Civil War and the Emancipation Proclamation, black folk in Falls Church were doing whatever they could do to be an active part of this community.
Uncle Freddie.
Oh, Miss Eliza. Congratulations. I hear you done bought yourself a house. Does me right proud to see my niece and her husband prospering so.
And have you heard about our new store? It's going to be right there next to the Falls Church.
Oh, indeed, indeed. Got yourself a whole acre. I see you continue my work ethic.
Work ethic, Uncle Freddie, your willingness to do the undoable. That's something I learned from you, and you must have taught that son of yours as well.
Running for the town council. Did you ever think you'd see the day?
See, there was something about this family. No one had it easy, but everyone was willing to put in the work to get the things they wanted, to get what was near impossible in those times. Freddie Foote Jr., he was the first black man to serve on town council. He owned a grocery store and a cobbler shop right in the center of town. After he left town council, there'd be another 50 years before the town of Falls Church had a black man among its leaders. Unfortunately, after Freddie Foote Jr. passed away, the town passed an amendment that would redraw the town's borders. With the new borders, they would keep as many white folk in Falls Church and push as many black folk as possible out into Fairfax County, where they had no vote, no say, and no representation in the town of Falls Church. Oh, it didn't matter that there had recently been a black man on town council in living memory.
Mr. Harper! Mr. Harper! Take a look at this.
The new geographical boundaries of Falls Church as decided upon by the redistricting committee. And I heard they were having these meetings. Should be good for the town.
But look, the new town boundaries run straight down all the Negro neighborhoods. Huh, back in Chicago, folks would never stand for that.
Well, it's not about race, it's about politics. Giving the Republicans their own space.
How's that? Mr. Davis up on Main Street was as big a Lincoln supporter as myself. And Wayne Adams over there worked on President Harrison's campaign just last year. You don't see them drawing us out of the Falls Church boundaries, do you?
Well, you can't get that particular.
You really believe that this has nothing to do with removing the Negro population? If you're telling me that they rearranged the town just to get the Republicans out, then why is it that there are still 12 Republican households in Falls Church and only 4 Negro homes?
You're still thinking like a Yankee. Here in the South, it's more of a political decision.
I'll tell you, Mr. Harper, sometimes this place makes me want to go right back to Illinois.
Change and not change. If someone were to draw an invisible line right through the center of this room, would that stop you from seeing the person next to you? Would you? Would? Of course not. So a line was drawn simply to put some folk on one side and some folk on the other. Now, of course, people felt it, but they drew a line. They didn't build a wall. So people were crossing back and forth and continuing life as usual. How you doing, sir? Man, how are you? And right in the center of Falls Church, there were white businesses, Negro businesses, customers, and salespeople of both colors. Give me this line. This is the line. And on Sunday, the pastor at Galloway Church took the long trek from his house in Fairfax County to his church congregation in Falls Church, when all he really had to do was go out of his house, over the line, and into the church. And yet, he crossed municipalities. He would laugh, and life would go on, as it has a tendency to do. This side. You want some gerrymandering?
You all are still in Falls Church, you still got your vote.
Where we go?
No problem. I'm sorry, sir.
I'm all tired
You're in
of the
Fairfax
gerrymandering.
County, you lost your man. Nothing personal.
Gerrymandering.
Oh, wait a minute, we got something to do. Oh. Fairfax County, Falls Church. Falls Church. Falls Church it is. You think so too? Falls Church? Falls Church? Falls Church it is. You sure? Majority wins.
There you go. That ought to hold you till next payday.
Oh, we know who to come to when we're looking for things, when things get tight around here for food.
Of course. See you soon.
Yes.
Say hello to family for me.
I will.
Mark my words, Eliza Henderson, that credit is going to be the death of this place.
And good morning to you, Francis.
I'm serious, Eliza. Now what if I ran around town doing everyone's hair for free? My business wouldn't have stayed open all these years, that's what.
Now, I respect that, Francis, but it's different with my store. If people can't afford to pay you, they've got no business getting their hair done. But everyone still needs to eat. And sometimes people need a hand up.
Every week? Now what happens when someone opens up a store that won't take credit? They will get the bills paid while you struggle to keep your doors open.
Now, don't bar trouble, Francis. I'm still here. And besides, nobody needs to use the back entrance of my store.
We need to keep everything that we have, especially now, Eliza, with all these changes. You're one of the last Negro businesses within the official Falls Church boundary lines.
Well, as long as the community keeps coming in to support me, I'll be here. They look after me, I'll look after them.
Community. Yes, we know how well the community looks after us. Freddie Foot went barely in the ground good before they started fooling with those boundary lines. Politics, my foot.
We'll get through, Francis. We always do. Oh, why, Mrs. Wells, you found us.
Yes, I did. Everyone told me the best place to get my ingredients was Eliza Henderson's store.
This is Mrs. Wells. She just moved from Washington. She's head of the Ladies' Aid Society over in West Falls Church. This is Mrs. Frances Tenner. She owns the best beauty shop in town. Probably half the women you passed on the street today have their hair done by Frances.
Oh, come on now, Eliza.
Well, how do you do?
How do you do?
Well, I'm here getting ready for the Falls Church Pie Contest. The Ladies' Aid Auxiliary has asked me to host this year. So I'm here to ask your advice, Mrs. Henderson. Should I use white sugar or brown sugar for my apple pie?
Well, we should be asking Mrs. Tenner here. She won the ribbon last year.
Oh, well, you must come and defend your title.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Wells, but I can't. I don't live within the official Falls Church boundary lines. The contest is only open to those who live in the town.
Well, that is just ridiculous.
It's a real shame, isn't it? Seems like some people around here are afraid of a little competition.
Among other things.
Exactly. A rising crust doesn't care what side of the line it's up and is on. Wouldn't you say, Mrs. Wells?
Oh, I certainly would. Pie is pie. This is taking things too far.
Of course, you're the host, ma'am. But it seems to me that putting together an all-county pie contest would show some folks around here we won't let some men draw some lines on a map and tell us we can't be neighbors.
I like your thinking, Mrs. Henderson. Sometimes we have to lead in our own way. If we just do the right things like my mother always said, if you want something done right, hand it over to the ladies.
I use both types of sugar in my pie, Mrs. Wells. You try that.
Oh, I certainly will. Thank you, Mrs. Tinner. And don't put your pants away just yet.
I just love helping to bring about more good pie in the world.
Now convention days are over and election time's near. From east to west, from north to south, there's just one name in every mouth. When a fella meets a fella and he says to him, "What's yours?" He says, "I think I'll have to drink to the Democratic cause." It's Wilson, that's all. Oh, Wilson, that's all. Who strikes the public sentiment, says who will be our president. It's Wilson, that's all. You'll hear him call Tammany, oh Tammany. While on the street or on the car, while at your home or at the bar, it's Wilson, 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 that's all.
The time has come when the attitude of the Democratic Party toward Americans of Negro descent can be easily and clearly defined. I want to assure them, through you, that should I become President of the United States, they may count upon me for absolute fair dealing and for everything by which I may assist in advancing the interests of their race in the United States.
Woodrow, I simply must speak with you.
Well, hello, dear. You're back early from your tour of, where was it? Printing and engraving.
That is exactly what we need to discuss. Do you know what is going on there between the whites and the niggers?
Now, Ellie, I know it can be shocking to see the Negroes working on the machines. McAdoo should have prepared you for that. I'll have a word with him.
Did you also know that the whites and the niggers are sharing the same lunchroom? My land, Woodrow, I saw a white woman and a nigger woman sharing food.
No, I didn't know about that part.
Well, is this how you want your federal government to be run, just letting those people have the lay of the land? Something needs to be done before your supporters hear about this.
Now, Ellie, the Negro question is a lot less simple here than it was in Georgia. I had to give these people something.
Oh, I don't want to hear one more word about that W.E.B. Du Bois and his Negro activists that ran all over you during the campaign, making you say those ridiculous things. The Negroes voted for you out of their own choice. And now the Democrats are in charge. And they need to think about that if they want to keep their place.
Of course, dear, but these things take time. Now, please don't get yourself so upset over this.
Well, someone had better get upset. The white people in your government aren't getting upset. Why, if these kind of things are happening in the Bureau of Printing and Engraving, imagine the liberties the Negroes are taking elsewhere. The other departments, or the Capitol. And God forbid, right here in the White House.
Oh, now, just a moment. Nothing like that is happening here.
How can you be so sure?
I will look into the policies of every department of the government. Will that satisfy you?
Well, I wouldn't wait too long, or else that Du Bois and his kind will be taking the office right next to yours.
I believe the man pronounces his name Du Bois.
I'll see you at dinner, dear.
Wilson, that's all. You'll hear them call Tammany, oh Tammany. While at the street on Should I become President of the United States, they may count on me for absolute fair dealing and for everything by which I could assist in promoting the interest of the race in the United States. Wrote it down to memorize it.
I suppose it's our fault for believing in Wilson. He lied just like they all do. I just can't get over all these changes because of one visit by a silly white woman.
Well, she is the first lady.
Exactly. She is not the president. He should have come to see for himself before starting up all this trouble for us. This is exactly what he said would not happen when he made his campaign statement to the NAACP.
Well, here, let me help with that.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Now, see here, Jacob. There's no call for that. We're all still the same people.
How are we still the same? I no longer can eat in the lunchroom I've been eating in it for 9 years.
Well, I don't think it's a case of inferiority.
What do you think it is, Thomas?
We're just going to have to make some changes. And then you'll see, everything will be exactly as it was before.
I didn't eat in the laboratory before.
That's not a permanent situation. Is Mildred all right?
Yeah, she's all right.
She looks upset.
Mildred and Emily are the ones the first lady saw eating together. What started all this?
We worked together. She would have seen us together at some point in the day.
Work and socializing are not the same. We told you to eat by yourselves.
Well, she seemed like a very forward-thinking woman. How are we to know we'd get in trouble for doing something we do every day?
She's not that forward-thinking. But no one's blaming you, Emily. You're not the one who should have known better.
Oh, see here, that was uncalled for.
Never mind, Emily. They're determined to blame me.
No one is placing blame, Mildred. You girls just didn't know, that's all.
If you would have just let us talk to her, then maybe we could...
It probably would have made it worse. We probably wouldn't have our job.
I don't have my job. For 6 years, I worked on the same machine in the sizing room with Emily. And now I'm back to the job I had when I first got here. And I'm not even allowed to talk to her anymore.
Well, you're lucky you got a job. It ain't gonna be so easy for Negroes around here now.
It was just lunch. It was just lunch.
All right, everyone, all right. It's not as it seems. The management is doing this for your protection.
Our protection? Well, who's in danger?
What? Pardon me, William, but weren't you just thrown off the train
No.
by hostile white passengers?
That didn't happen here at work. That happened in Falls Church, and that was the fault of those white men at the home guard, not any of the passengers.
Well, except for the white woman who demanded your seat and caused trouble in the first place. Seems to be a pattern in your life, William.
In all our lives.
Can we get back to the point, gentlemen, please? My point here is that there are people like that everywhere. If you worked with your own kind, then you wouldn't have to encounter that sort of thing.
You mean to tell me that that's why I have to go behind a screen every day so the people I've worked with for 9 years can't see me?
We haven't worked everything out just yet. But you'll see. It'll be just like it was before, only the Negro workers will have their own place.
We had a place! We worked here too!
Jacob, these changes are affecting everyone. I'm in a new position myself.
He knows. He had your job. Remember?
Well, I have it now. And I have a job to do, and frankly, this isn't helping. Emily, you're actually the one I came down here to talk to. You are to return to your own department.
Oh, but she was just helping us.
I understand, but I asked the three of you to do this. Emily? Now, we're all going to have to adjust to these changes. Get this all cleared away before the dinner hour.
Anything you say, Mr. Smith.
Here's a little song I'm singing about people, you know it's true. If you're black, you gotta work for a living. Here's what they'll say to you. If you're white, you're alright. If you're brown, you stick around.
Henderson.
Oh, good morning, everybody. The man of the hour. How you doing this fine morning, E.B.? Now, you know we heard about the verdict. Congratulations. Now, if you had told me yesterday that a colored man would get justice in a court system in this town, I would have told you to go shake your head. Call Dr. Johnson.
You did say that when I told you I was going to hire a lawyer and pursue the case.
Oh, I probably did, E.B. I probably did.
Hello, gentlemen. Fine day, isn't it? Train late again.
We were just talking about the verdict. I guess I should shake your hand too, sir.
Yes, sir.
'Cause if it hadn't been for your testimony, our boy Will wouldn't have won this case. Why, I just can't believe it. A white judge awarding damages to a Negro man. Oh, I knew that. Just can't believe it.
Mr. Jacob Depicts.
Sir.
My father appreciates you standing up to the home guard on his behalf. This is a great victory for him, especially with everything that happened at work after Mrs. Wilson's visit.
Yes. That Wilson business with the federal government is nothing but shameful.
Shameful.
Well, one fight at a time.
Well spoken, E.B.
Mama? What's that?
Come sit back down, sugar. Come on.
Over there. Why did they put Mr. Depicts' name on a doll and hang it up, Mama?
Oh my goodness, I don't think you ought to see this.
She's lucky it was a gunny sack. If he'd been a Negro, they would have saved time and hung him.
Joseph, please. There are children present.
She's got to learn about life sooner or later.
Sorry you had to see this, Jacob.
One fight at a time. Right, E.B.?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Professor, some night when you're peacefully dreaming in your downy couch of the charming baboons you have been instructing and sniffing in the delightful odor exuding from their bodies, you will be abruptly awakened by ghosts standing on either side of your couch. And after you have been gagged, you will be borne to a nearby tree, bound, stripped, and 30 lashes laid upon your Ethiopian back. After which you will be left for some passerby to find. We are for law and order! So long as your aforesaid Ethiopians behave. But when you thrust yourself upon your superiors, the white people, your doom is sealed. A word to the wise is sufficient. Signed, K.
The only thing that we did wrong was stay in the wilderness a little too long.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. The only thing that we did right was the day we started to fight. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
Good evening. My name is Mr. Ali Tenner. Good evening. Good evening, your wife and family. Good evening. I have with me the principal of the Negro Elementary School in Falls Church, Miss Mary Ellen Henderson. Good evening. How are you? We have come here today to request funding for a new school for Negro children in Falls Church. Now, Mrs. Henderson and her fine staff can inspire minds anywhere, but their current conditions are very challenging, right?
Thank you, Mr. Tenor. Currently, we are in our two-room schoolhouse in the Oddfellows Hall. Much of our staff's teaching time is taken up with building maintenance and simply getting the children to and from the building.
Now, one building for all 6 grades, well, that's a good start. As well as facilities for,
To promote modesty.
That's right. What did you say, sir? Yes, I know that you have a lot of people on wanting to talk tonight, but we think that the welfare and safety of the Negro children is very... Yes? Well, I suppose we could come back at another time, and when you have more time, I'll sign up and get on the agenda.
We'll see you gentlemen next month.
You can bet on that.
What's that?
Letter to the Post about the segregation ordinance. They may not care up in D.C., but that's not going to stop me from trying everything I can.
A lot of people around here read the Post, too. We have got to respond to this ordinance in many ways, Ned, and I think a thoughtful, articulate letter is good. Shows that we have intelligent people on our side, too. You should write to all the papers.
Sounds like you're getting ready to tell me something.
Now, I'm serious, Ned.
Oh, thank you now.
Of course, now that you mention it, Ollie Tenor and I are headed back to the school board meeting next month.
I knew it. I know my Nellie. Listen, though. You and Ollie watch yourselves going out on these school campaigns. They'll be looking for any reason to cause trouble now.
Ollie and I don't give anyone reason to do anything. We're just stating our case. They refuse to answer any of our letters, so we're going to go to the meeting that's open to the public for comments.
Just be careful. You and I both know who they mean by public and who they don't.
Now, E.B., how long have I lived here? How long have I been a Negro woman here? I know how they do, and you knew what would happen when you brought me out here to the country. I can't sit by and not do for my children.
I wouldn't expect anything less, Nellie. Just be careful. I worry anyway. That's my job.
All right, then.
Hello, Nell. Hello, Evie.
Evening,
Joe.
Joseph.
Mhm.
Just in time for some iced tea and lemon bars.
Oh, delicious, delicious. Evie, did you make those changes to that letter of protest for the council?
You mean the paragraph about the prominent citizens supporting us? Yes.
The white citizens.
I think that would be implied. Who else would they consider prominent?
Well, I would say Mr. Joseph Tenor is.
Oh, thank you, Nell. But only on one side of town. Listen, I hear you and Ollie are going back to the school board meeting next week.
We'll be there. If they don't want to answer our letters, they'll have to deal with us in the open meeting.
Bringing the mountain to Mohammed, so to speak.
Yes, sir.
Joe, E.B., everyone here yet? We need to discuss this segregation ordinance. It's preposterous. And the CCPL, they need to respond. Has anyone spoken to Duputron yet?
Yes, he's with us.
Well, that's good.
And Father Van Ingram is writing a letter of support from the Catholics. But you know what I think we should do? We should ask the NAACP to start a branch right here in Falls Church. We talked about that in the last meeting. Now, most of you didn't agree, but I don't think we have any choice now.
That's going to be a long road, gentlemen. They only have branches in cities. Evening, Miss Nell.
Evening, Mr. Summerall. Iced tea and lemon bars?
I've been thinking about them lemon bars all the way over here.
People in cities are not the only ones who need help now. Did you get that new school yet?
Still in the one room.
That's what I'm telling you.
Well, we might as well try and get help from our own. The Lord helps those who help themselves,
Amen.
right?
Amen.
Well, help yourselves now, gentlemen.
Yes,
Yes,
man. Get your hand out.
remember me. My name is Mr. Ollie Denner. And I have with me here the elementary school principal of the Negro School, Miss Mary Ellen Henderson. Now, we're very happy that you've allowed us to speak here this evening. Since you didn't answer my last 3 requests, I'm glad that you've allowed us to speak. Now, if you remember, we came here, asking for funds for a new school for the Negro children of Falls Church. And that is still needed, right?
Yes, it is, Mr. Chairman. As we stated in our letters requesting a meeting, we put together a building fund to help defray some of our costs.
That's right.
We had our first fundraiser last month and enjoyed a fine turnout from all over the community.
Mm-hmm. We raised over $30. We received funding from people like Mr. Brown of Brown's Hardware and J.C. De Futuron himself and other prominent citizens. Yes, I know we're supposed to keep our remarks short. That's why I've asked Mrs. Henderson to show you the receipts that she's already gotten together from the people who've contributed.
I've had some of our older scholars make copies for everyone, so you should see what fine students we have. Definitely worth the investment. Why, yes, sir. Many of them are doing quite well in their studies. Well, I believe that's in spite of their environment.
Mr. Chairman, now you can't expect these people to continue operating in an environment like this. Just because these fine teachers are showing results doesn't mean we can improve the learning environment. Do you agree? Well, I suppose we can debate this matter further another time. I'll sign up and get on the agenda again.
We'll see you gentlemen next month.
You can bet on that.
Yes, take your time, brother.
To the memory of Mr. Joseph B. Tess, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People has lost an efficient service in the death of Mr. J.B. Tenner. The colored citizens of Fairfax County, and especially Falls Church, should never forget the efforts of the late president of this organization. He believed in himself.
Yes, he did.
He believed in his racial group. He protected their civic interests and waged many a fight to secure justice for those who had fallen into difficulties. His logic, his sincerity, and his tact secured respect and goodwill from antagonists as well as his colleagues and friends.
Yes, yes.
With all the ups and downs in his lifetime, amidst the slanderous remarks by the evil and non-progressive, Mr. Joseph Tenner remained unembittered, unsoured, cheerful, and optimistic. Even with the knowledge that many people of the more powerful group had set a limit to the possible progress of his race, he was fair and kept free from hatred or malice.
Put that behind him.
He stood actively for education. He served to advance the educational facilities and opportunities for the children of the community. His dream His dream was to see a school in the town the equal of our churches. And he was always aiding the movements to further the work of the teachers.
Yes.
He's now gone.
Gone too soon. Oh.
Mr. Tenor leaves a void in this church, in the school, and the organization of the NACP that will be exceedingly hard to fill. Our only hope is that amongst the many he has inspired and stimulated, someone may approximate the measure of the man that Mr. Jones was. Someone who will carry on. Someone who will help make our town, our race, better.
Yes, Lord. Yes.
By reason of the life now closed. Amen. Amen. Amazing grace, how sweet, sweet the sound.
Yes, Lord.
That saved a wretch like me.
Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord.
I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind and now I see.
Right, right.
And we've been here 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun. We've no less days to sing God's praise. And when we first
Slow down now. You get going too fast and disrupt the balance and you're gonna spill all of our water.
I wish I was as big as Henry. He could lift this old bucket with one hand.
And when Henry was your age, that bucket was just as heavy for him then as it is for you now. But we all learn now, don't we?
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, Mrs. Henderson.
Good morning, Miss Saunders. I thought the water had been brought up already today.
Well, it had, but some third graders out of the Odd Fellows Hall classroom spilled theirs, so we gave them ours. Betty here was finished with her work early, so she volunteered to go get us some more. It's her first time.
I just had a birthday. I'm 7 now.
7 years old, my goodness.
Before you know it, you're going to be 10 years old and you're going to be tending to the fire. Oof.
Are you working on the brand new boats, Miss Nellie?
Mm-hmm.
Leave our books alone, Jacob.
Now, Betty, did Miss Nellie say that these books are ready for you to read just yet?
No, ma'am.
Now, I'll have these books fixed up for you by the end of next week. You did a real good job with the water. Thank you. You run on back to your classroom now.
Yes, Miss Nellie.
Leave our books alone, you jigaboos. Niggers should learn about Ethiopia. With Ethiopia spelled incorrectly, I might add. My goodness. I would think the whites would teach their children better manners. I guess it doesn't matter to them since they know the books are just gonna come to us anyway. Here, let me help you with some of these.
Now, how are we supposed to teach the Civil War when half the books have these chapters ripped out?
No, they're just mad because our side won.
I wonder if the teachers at Madison or Jefferson Elementary have to do this. Or if part of the curriculum involves fetching water and building fires for the whole school?
And that fancy brick building with those nice fine classrooms? I doubt it. Best not think about what goes on there or else you just get angry.
Or maybe it's time that we did. Look at this. White children ride heated buses to school. Now, when our buses break down, we've got 5- and 6-year-olds walking 10 miles to school. You should see the poison ivy all up and down little Millie Thomas's legs. Ollie Tenner and I have been on this for 30 years and nothing has changed. I've been polite, I've been nice, and I've been ladylike. It's time to try something else. I'm putting together a report that shows plainly the level of discrepancy between white schools and Negro schools.
Certainly does make you think seeing it all written out in black and white like this. Wait. They get money for administration and operations.
Exactly. Nothing else works. It is time to speak the language the white man understands. Money. I don't know why I didn't think of this in the first place.
See. But what if they take away the buildings we already have?
Well, we can't do worse than our own homes. In fact, we do every day. Or what about the church? They can't take God's house away from us, too.
But aren't you afraid to go talk in front of those white men? You never know how they're going to handle something.
Well, my mother testified before Congress and my father worked for presidents. I guess I can handle the school board.
I guess you can, Miss Mary. I won't ever forget that time that you walked up into that superintendent's face and you lectured him about throwing away perfectly good books. The looks on their faces at that meeting we weren't even supposed to be at. Oh.
Well, it worked, I guess, except for having to fix the pages and erase their foolishness every time we get new books.
Janitorial services for all their classrooms. That must be something.
When I'm through with this, there will be an accounting for the level of support between white and Negro schools. It is a disgrace.
Well, Miss Nellie, it looks like you're going to shame them into doing better for Negro children. And then we can buy our own books.
Our disgrace and shame.
You're going to need some more paper.
Our disgrace and shame. School facilities for Negro children in Fairfax County.
White schools are all brick or stone, except for 4 wooden buildings.
Negro schools are 1 to 3 room, wooden buildings.
White schools have running water, janitorial service, inside toilets, and central heating.
Negro schools have outside pit toilets. For teachers and students, there is no running water, and the stoves are inside. Oh, I forgot, there are no janitorial services. The teachers do the hauling, the cleaning, and light the fires. And in 3 schools, there is no water on premises.
White children ride in heated buses.
Oh, some students walk 4 to 6 miles just to get to school. And their buses are old and rickety and are not heated. The 1945-46 proposed school budget is?
For white children, and the capital outlay is $745,000.
Negro schools, 0.
Administrations and operations, $97,730.
Negro schools, 0.
$160,000 for 6 classrooms, a washroom, a cafeteria, classrooms of general use for the elementary and high schools.
Wow. Negro schools, 0.
Thank you, Superintendent Woodson. Yes, we'd like to invite you to the opening of the James Lee School for Negro Children. We have had some wonderful remarks from our county and state officials, as well as our reverend. But now we'd like to hear from the children. This fine young lady right here has written a verse in tribute to her principal, Ms. Mary Ellen Henderson. Mary Ellen, now come on over.
I'd be honored. Now, Mr. Tenor was right beside me all those years getting to school, so I want you to stand right here and listen with me.
Okay.
School days, school days. Good old false church school days. We carried the water, we fetched the wood. We had a teacher who understood all of our needs and what to do. She taught us reading and numbers too. She taught us to respect all men. Miss Nellie Henderson.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, the reason we worked so hard for this day is right here.
Shall we take a picture before we have a tour of the school? Smile.
Mr. Bradley, sir. We've received another letter from that Mr. Henderson.
Those things are like clockwork. Was that the 6th one this week? 20th this month?
And over 2,000, and that's just since you've been working here. You know, sir, you get more material from him than you do your own reporters.
Yeah, he's a lot less expensive than my reporters, too. Let's see what he's got to say this time.
May 27, 1948. To the editor of the Post. Every intelligent citizen knows that we can't have democracy in our nation's capital until segregation of races because of color is eliminated. Children in our schools today ought to be friendly in public ways and meetings with peoples of different races. The difficulty of doing this is in the fact that they are being educated in separate schools. All around the nation, educators are embarking upon intercultural programs of education to lessen the tensions due to religious and racial differences, but not so in dual school systems. Sincerely, E.B. Henderson.
You know, sir, the man's got a point.
I think so, too. Print it!
I'd like to propose a toast to our guest, Mr. E.B. Henderson. You know, your mother and my mother were lifelong friends from childhood, and I've known you some 60 years. So I want to say a few words for you. I gotta put this down.
Should we sit down, Mr. Adams?
Now I have to write them down because you know I'm not much of a speaker. E.B., this came to me. I just had to write it down. In the fields among the flowers, birds and animals, you found beauty, entertainment, and invaluable knowledge. In the neighboring streams, you sought the thrills of wading, swimming, fishing, and boating. In your close communion with nature, you developed poise, coordination, mental and physical agility, strength and endurance, qualities that I might add enabled you to face the rigors of the vigorous life which awaited you. You became a valuable force in the community life in Washington, D.C., and in nearby Virginia and Maryland. As a schoolman, you were progressive, with an understanding attitude toward the problems of the day, which you faced with courageous and contagious conviction. You must know, Dr. Henderson, what a pleasure it is for me, on behalf of your colleagues and friends in the community, to be asked to present this expression of their esteem and appreciation of your contribution to the cause of education and your interest in making ours a real democratic world in which young people and their elders may be able to enjoy full citizenship. It's still there. I want to raise a toast to my friend and yours, E.B. Henderson. Here.
Would you all mind terribly if I said a few words about Dr. Henderson as well? Yeah, I'm no Cato Adams. Who is? Perhaps not 60 years, but 40 years. 40 years ago, as a young civil engineer, I surveyed the lands of your mother's estate. You were better educated than I, both academically and in life. And as I pointed out to my parents, you were handsome. A Clark Gable in sepia. I mean, witness the photograph. But most of all, I admired the qualities of heart and mind that made you a man. And 10 years later, when I was on the town council, I tried to get the balcony of the State Theater open for colored. I argued at the time that there's no place in town where a decent colored boy can take his girl for an evening's amusement. Even in Raleigh, a hotbed of Ku Klux activity, they have reserved the balconies of the finest theaters. And I've seen many a well-dressed colored couple going in on a Sunday afternoon. Well, I was outvoted. But not because of bigotry itself, but because they told me they didn't trust their sons to stay out of the balcony. What a commentary on the whites. Well, I was heartsick. And I'll never forget, you met me on the back steps. And you remember what you said to me? You said, "Don't feel too bad, Mr. White. Even in Liberia, the only black democracy, we still have discrimination, black against black. And now we have both lived to see a better day. And I feel like I can call you by your first name out of equality, out of respect, and not inequality. And on this evening, when we toast your many accomplishments, let me add my congratulation to a list that will go on into eternity. First and foremost, may I articulate your greatest accomplishment, the creation of the first rural branch of the NAACP along with Mr. Joseph Tinner. The creation of the Black Basketball League and your tireless efforts to secure equal education for Negro children through your thousands of letters to the editor, working tirelessly beside Miss Nellie. The future, of course, belongs to the young. They are our hope. But you are the one who showed us the way to make a world for them. Here's to you, E.B. God bless you.
Broadwater to your museum. This letter is in response to my recent visit to your museum where, much to my dismay, I discovered that the family history that you were entrusted to protect has been neglected. Therefore, after much consideration, our family has decided that this powder horn should be returned. For over 220 years, our ancestors protected this powder horn, not because it belonged to Colonel Broadwater, but because it was a tangible item that helped relay our family's history. I am disappointed that this rich and valuable history would be overlooked.
Dear Jackie, I'm enclosing a copy of the research our museum has conducted, as well as the findings that we have drawn. Charles Lewis Broadwater of Fairfax County was the grandson of Captain Charles Broadwater, a merchant mariner who entered the Virginia Navy Potomac Fleet in 1776 as a midshipman aboard the sloop American Congress. It appears by the 1778 Revolutionary Army orders that Broadwater obtained documentation that entitled him to supplies from the Virginia State Store. This powder horn was likely acquired from this commissary.
The history of this powder horn has been passed down in our family. The Foots, the Hicks, the Hendersons, and the Richards all protected and passed along this object. All of these families still have descendants in the Falls Church area, and all of these families recall the true history of this powder horn.
Following examination of the Broadwater powder horn, our staff has determined that it is a very fine example of this type of equipment, well made and preserved. The powder horn itself is quite small to be used with a flintlock rifle or musket. It may well have been used with pistols. The text on the horn reads, C.L. Broadwater, October 22, 1807.
The date reads 1636, when the horn was manufactured.
It appears to have been etched with a small gouging tool and is likely the date of Broadwater's birth. Our researchers have been seeking documentation that will connect the object to the Broadwater family, as this will add significance and value to the artifact.
After the battle at the Fitzhugh Plantation, the horn was taken by a Native American.
The horn was likely passed down to Broadwater's son after his death and remained in the family after the date of its original use, or else fell out of knowledge until its recent rediscovery.
For over 200 years, the powder horn was hidden, safeguarded, and passed down by our ancestors. It was kept in trunks, in safes, and padded boxes under the bed. Its story was told to every child in our family so that they could understand the significance of the object and its ties to our history.
Our museum appreciates your family finding and contributing this important historical relic.
Yet, to our great disappointment, none of this history has been maintained. We regret that we ever gave this object to this museum. We were promised by your museum that you would continue to safeguard this object and that you would share our family history with future generations. It is a slap in the face that the source of the powder horn isn't even mentioned in your label.
It would be a genuine loss to our museum as well as its patrons if the powder horn were to be returned. But rest assured, this museum will put forth the history of the Broadwater family in our exhibit.
Funny thing about history, it's not just something for textbooks, museums. Sure, those things have their value, but there's history in this town. There's the old Falls Church, Brown's Hardware, and when you know it, just at the end of the street, there's a place that has its value too. The Henderson House, where E.B. Henderson and Miss Snell once lived, where E.B. Henderson's grandson and granddaughter-in-law are living now, keeping family history safe and making history of their own lives. Wow. And just out there, Tenor Hill, where E.B. Henderson and Joseph Tenor helped to organize the Colored People's Protection League and the first rural chapter of the NAACP. Oh, there's lots of landmarks and people right next to you who could tell you their stories if you'd only ask. Yes, there's history in this room. Yes, this very room. Every beating heart, every thinking brain will help shape those things that will someday be called history. If you want to be remembered, it's best that you remember those who came before you. After all, there isn't just one side of a story, just as there's never one side of an arch.